Men, we need you. There, I said it. But it is absolutely the truth. If we want to continue to be a thriving, sustainable, and profitable industry, we need to get more women into this industry and we need to push for gender equity. And the only way we are going to get there is if we have the support of male allies to help drive that change.
Welcome to the Building Up Women in Property podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Bangura, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today. Whether you're a woman aiming to become a confident, impactful leader, or you're a leader committed to promoting gender equity in the property and construction industry, this podcast is designed specifically for you. Join me every week to gain insights and inspiration that will leave you excited and confident about taking your next steps. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's dive into today's topic.
Yesterday, I was at a NAWIC event and we were talking and sharing stories, and someone asked me, is the industry changing? Are we actually seeing positive outcomes for women in the industry? And to be honest, there'll be days and weeks and months where I see really positive steps in the right direction. I see people engaging in meaningful conversations and see initiatives in practice that are gaining traction and creating positive results. And then there'll be other days or weeks or months where it feels like all of that hard work is being reversed. And to be honest, it feels quite often like it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I get it. That is often the nature of change. And when we talk about gender equity, we all appreciate that organisations and leaders want to be perceived as driving change. And I think in truth, most of those people have good intentions, but intentions will only get you so far. Real meaningful change is driven when there is a clear agenda, when there is a clear prioritisation of the issue. And this is where we need leadership, CEOs, executive teams to be championing gender equity. Because we know that women have been talking about these issues for decades. There has been a groundswell or a grassroots movement of women advocating for changes that address systemic issues in society and certainly in our industry for a long time. And these have been met with varying levels of success. But the truth is, in the last 50 years, some things have shifted, but not that much. We are still not at a point of having anywhere close to gender equity, and men continue to hold the vast majority of positions of power, particularly in the property and construction industry. And until we get those male leaders on board driving gender equity as a priority, progress is going to continue to be slow. And so we need our male leaders, and we need men across all levels of our organisations and our industries to be supporting women and to be supporting the goal of gender equity. And this is why male allyship is so important. Because frankly, guys, you still hold the power, and the success of women and a more balance of power and opportunity will be largely as a result of your commitment to the issue. And I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It is a bit of a conundrum. Power is a very alluring and infatuating thing. And we all like it, right? Humans love to have power. By asking men to drive gender equity, we are also asking you to give up some of the power you have. And this is where we see a struggle happen. We see men talking about wanting to push this agenda, but not following through. We've seen for a while since, Male Champions of Change was first sort of launched back in 2010, where we had men in property and construction involved in that initiative. We have seen the conversation about the advancement of women and creating equity within the industry, but we haven't seen meaningful outcomes from those conversations. And as a woman in the industry, it's been really hard to watch that. It's been really hard to hear male leaders talk about these issues and then not follow through. I don't think it's ill-intentioned. I think most people, as I said, genuinely want to support the idea of gender equity, but they don't necessarily know how to do it or they don't have the follow-through. And so today I want to talk about what it means to be a male ally, how you, men out there, can really support and drive change. So let's start there. A male ally is a man who actively supports and advocates for gender equity, right? Now, this is not a title to be flung around. It is about taking action and driving change. And male allies leverage their position, they use their influence and invest resources to promote and implement changes that foster inclusive environments and drive equitable outcomes in the workplace. And it's done with empathy, it's done with respect and a commitment to understanding and addressing the unique challenges that women face in the property and construction industry. And there are a few parts that go into this. In order to be an ally, you have to start with the awareness. First of all, recognising the existence of gender inequity and understanding why that exists. So understanding the systemic barriers that women face to entering, to remaining in, and to being promoted within the industry. Now, these are things like gender stereotypes, where young people perceive that construction and property is a space for men and not for women. And this has obviously been a huge blocker, particularly for things like on-site roles and trades, where for the longest time, girls have just not perceived that as a career path for them. So that's one part, but it's also things like the broken rung, which is that barrier where women struggle to step into that first leadership role. It's the leaky pipeline, where we have the gradual loss of women through different stages of their career. And we see that being a real issue, particularly for women in their late 20s and 30s, particularly around points they may be thinking about having children and having families. And the glass cliff, that phenomenon where women are more likely to be placed into leadership roles when things are going badly, right? During times of crisis and instability. And of course, we have the second shift, which is all of the unpaid domestic labour and responsibilities that often fall on women, that women tend to perform outside of their paid employment and on top of their paid employment at a much greater rate than men do. So to be a male ally, you need to know what these issues are and really understand these barriers that impact women's opportunities and ability to enter, remain in, and develop within the industry. So that's the first bit, awareness. Now, the second piece is around advocacy. How do you use your voice and your position to support women's issues, to promote gender equity, and to push for organisational and industry change? So this is how you get in the game. This is getting involved in these topics and not just being a bystander to this issue. Now, the next key one is empathy, right? So actually being able to actively listen and really understand the perspective of women and to be able to hear their experiences and to put yourself in their position and validate the experiences that women have without judgment or dismissal. And to do it without judgment or dismissal or without defending yourself or others. And this can be really hard when we are dealing with big issues like gender equity and the challenges that come with it. It requires us to be able to hold space and to deal with uncomfortable topics and uncomfortable realities in order to be able to move forward from there. Now, the next piece is around concrete action. And this is about how do we take concrete steps to address inequalities. And this can be through things like mentoring and sponsorship and pushing for equitable policies. Now, the fifth piece is around accountability. How do you hold yourself and others around you accountable for the behaviours and the practices that perpetuate the issues we have around gender and gender inequality? Because we need that accountability. What we measure, we change. Because through accountability, we are setting a new standard for ourselves and others. And it's not that we will always get things right. We won't, and that's okay. But it is about holding a higher standard so we can drive change.
I hope you've been enjoying the episode. I want to take a moment to let you know about my 5-step leadership framework. This is for anyone aspiring to be an exceptional leader, create high-functioning teams, and drive consistent and sustainable results. Head over to my website, RebeccaBangura.com, to get your free copy or find a link in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the episode.
And the final piece is around continuously learning. So male allies are seeking to educate themselves on gender issues and to remain open to feedback and improvement, to really look at what is working and what isn't, and be ready to go in and change things, to whether it's your thinking or the approach or the strategy that's in place, and to tweak and refine it or change it completely in order to drive the right outcomes. And I think the really crucial thing about this is you do not need to have all of this figured out. This is a learning process, but being a male ally means that you engage in the issues. It's about having often hard and uncomfortable conversations to understand the systemic challenges and to understand the real lived experience of women in the industry, and to then take action to challenge and address and rectify these issues. It's not a tick box exercise. It's not a short burst of activity. This is a long game. This is about showing up day in, day out, holding that standard, driving change, and rinsing and repeating until we get there. And, we've got an upcoming episode about how you can drive that initiative within your organisation and within the industry. But for right now, I just want you to really think about your position, think about your role, and make that decision. Are you going to be a male ally? Are you going to step in and own everything that comes with that? Are you going to be a force for good and a force for change in order to create gender equity in our industry? And my hope is that you absolutely will. And I'm here to support and guide you on that journey. And, reach out to me. Let me know. I want to hear your perspective and how I can support you to help drive the change. Because as I said, we need you. We need the men in our industry to be driving this change, because you do hold the power and the influence. And as women, we will not get there on our own. And I want to leave you with one final thought. Many years ago, I was at a Champions for Change lunch. This event was a bunch of stereotypical older white men up on stage talking about how we advance women. And there was lots of conversation around how women should learn to play golf and take an interest in sports. To be honest, it was a bit of a disaster of a lunch. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion. And it really highlighted how many of these CEOs and industry leaders hadn't really grasped the depth of the issue, and they weren't aware enough to really drive meaningful change. Now, this was 10 years ago, and so much has changed since then, but not enough. There is still so much more we could and should be doing to drive that attraction and the retention and development of women in property and construction. And we all start on our journey somewhere. So it doesn't matter how much you know and how many missteps you might take on the way. If you are able to keep showing up, keep educating yourself, keep learning, keep advocating and taking action, you will be part of the change. You will be a force for good. We need that as women, and we need that as an industry. Our industry is facing a major skills shortage. And in order for us to keep delivering high quality, fit for purpose homes and buildings and offices and infrastructure, we need to create a space where women are welcomed and valued. And you are a crucial part of driving that change. So get involved, step up. And as I said, if I can help you, reach out. If you have questions, if you're unclear, if this seems daunting and you don't know where to start, reach out. I would love to just have a chat and point you in the right direction. We need your help. We need male allies in order to drive meaningful outcomes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this conversation. I look forward to you joining me on the next episode of Building Up Women in Property and continuing this conversation, how we drive meaningful change in our industry. Have a beautiful day.
Thanks for joining me on the Building Up Women in Property podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcast or Spotify, I'd love for you to take a moment and review the show if you found it helpful, or share it with a few friends. Thanks again, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.